In the religious inclusion work that I do, which, keep in mind, all falls under the umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion overall, I come across objections from two very distinct sides on a spectrum of this topic. One side of the spectrum comes from those who are the most privileged religious identity in the United States or in the West in general, which are Christians. Some of that community which believe that because they are Christian and based on their Christian values, they inherently are superior to everyone else who is not Christian, which of course would immediately fall out of the umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which the whole point is to see the beauty of diversity in human experience, including religious identity, but also race and gender and disability and neurodiversity and on and on. And then of course, not only do we see this diversity as a beautiful thing and not as a threat to ourselves or our own communities, but then we want to make sure that everyone is treated inclusively, that their voices are respected, that they have power to affect change in whatever space that they're in, whether it's an organization or a school or a community-based program, a neighborhood, and so on and so forth. And that people are treated equitably in respect to their differences. So if someone is a Christian supremacist, obviously that is going to fall immediately outside of the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have those who are not religious, whether they are atheist or agnostic or non-religious in general. Some folks on this side of the spectrum have experienced very difficult religious trauma, which absolutely should be respected, and I'm not trying to disrespect that in any way. However, some folks on this side of the spectrum will object to religious inclusion because their ideal is to have a perfectly secular environment, which that is incredibly problematic because there are many people who do identify strongly with a religious identity, with a spiritual identity. Some of us are very visibly identifiable in public, whether we wish to or not. And the idea of enforcing secularism is that, in theory, it is an objective way of having a society, which unfortunately that is not the case because there is really no such thing as true objectiveness. There's always going to be some set of values that are guiding the norm, and if you are enforcing secularism, then that is what is being guided as the norm, and anyone who has a religious identity, especially those who are very visibly identifiable outwardly, whether through their behaviors or their clothing, how they speak, their name, something of that sort, they are going to be the ones, we are going to be the ones who suffer for that. So for folks who are not religious and have this perception that we should enforce secularism, that is also going to fall outside of the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion work because, again, it is erasing a huge number of people's identity. Instead of seeing diversity and recognizing diversity as a beautiful thing and something to respect and to be curious about, not that you yourself have to be like other people. My goal and the goal of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not for all of us to become a giant gray blob of sameness. We can all be different from each other and also respect our differences. But that is not possible if you are enforcing secularism and forcing people to pretend that they have no religious identity. Of course, that doesn't mean that we're going to act like this is our house of worship while at work or while at university. There is some level of code switching that is out of respect for others, and I think that is totally fine. However, forcing people to hide parts of themselves, check parts of themselves at the door in order to enter a space and be treated with respect, that is a hard stop from me.